25th, 2025 Board of Education meeting. If I could have everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, that'll be led by Board Member Bill Maloney. And I have a whole list of moment of silence to remember. If we could remember Brielle Toe in a moment of silence. She was an Odyssey student who passed away unexpectedly. Brielle was deeply connected to our school community, serving as a treasurer of the Odyssey Black Student Union, a member of the flag football team. Her bubbly personality, great sense of humor, and warm and welcoming spirit made her a friend to many. Brielle was also someone who was deeply reflective, always striving to learn and grow. A true scholar, she was on track for early graduation and had already been accepted to her top college. Brielle's determination and drive left an indelible mark on those around her, and she will be deeply missed. Our thoughts are with Brielle's family during this difficult time. Corey Law, the son of a Greece print shop employee Patty Law and the son of retired facility operations employee John Law, passed away after a brief illness. Our thoughts are with the Law family. Brian Clicker O'Donnell recently passed away. Brian was a longtime accompanist for the Arcadian Athena's music departments during years 2000 to 2014. Our thoughts are with Brian's family during this difficult time. I would also like to remember Bob Brown, who recently passed away. He was a longtime employee in facilities operations, and he will be deeply missed. And Del Jandrew, who is a longtime Athena business teacher, he passed away recently. So if we could keep the Jandrew, Brown, O'Donnell, Law, and Toe families in your thoughts and prayers, that would be much appreciated. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, can I have somebody move the agenda table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, seconded by Mr. Maloney. Any corrections, additions, deletions to the agenda? Mr. Maloney.
Yes, I would like to move 1302, the veterans tax exemption, to 4.3 if possible.
Yep, we'll stay 13.02, but we'll move it up to be followed after 4.02. Anybody have anything else? All right. With that, all those in accepting the agenda as amended? That passes 7-0. Also, just of note, board members Bonagorio and Like are excused this evening. And with that, we will roll into our student leader comments from Olympia Middle School.
Good evening. My name is Lila Sanford. I'm in the 8th grade and I go to Greece Olympia. We are proud to share with you some of our school year highlights as well as some of the stuff that we're looking forward to. Presenting with me tonight is
Landon Smars, 8th grade.
Jason Alfalugi, 8th grade.
Jack Amering, 7th grade.
Maya Green, 6th grade.
At the beginning of February, our administrators shared student data with us, as well as continued expectations of the students while in the building. We discussed grades, behavior, and other important information to help us find success at school for the rest of the year.
Our middle and high school RISE initiative has continued. Students and staff have been receiving monthly awards, complete with a t-shirt, donut, and certificate from showing responsibility, integrity, respect, and empathy. Students and staff can nominate each other when they see others showing these attributes. The Olympia Extended Day program continues and has a strong attendance of over 50 students enrolled during the fall and spring sessions. Students that enroll stay after school, get a quick snack, and then work on math and ELA skills in a smaller group setting with their teachers.
Mr. Jones and the admin team have continued their community learning meetings with the whole staff by focusing on different topics, on differentiation in the classrooms, student-teacher conferencing, and other topics related to increasing engagement in the classrooms. As you guys can see on the image on the left, Mr. Jones is doing his favorite part of his job. And he brings joy and energy for the staff on his Tuesday community meetings.
In addition to the community learning meetings, the assistant principals have led professional learning as Choice PL. Mr. Passerell, Mr. Tan, and Mr. LaGray provide extension learning on Mr. Jones' CLMs, as well as instruction on topics that are relevant to student engagement and behavior. The middle and high school had their own dances during the winter. The high school winter ball was a hit for students and staff. And the middle school red carpet dance had students and staff showing off their best outfits as they walked the red carpet and had their pictures taken like celebrities.
For Black History Month this February, Olympia and Miss Nix, our community school site coordinator, is taking opportunities to celebrate Black history with events like the Black Scholar Luncheon, which had speakers in student-made food, as well as the celebration of Black excellence at the GPAC on February 15th. We continue to celebrate Black History Month through the end of this month with the Spirit Week this week and other celebrations.
Olympia held its 7th annual Prism concert on February 12th, showing the excellence, talent, and hard work our students and musical department offers. At the end of March, Olympia Musical Theater will be showing Matilda. Shows will be on March 21st, 22nd, 28th, and 29th. Get your tickets for what is bound to be a great show.
As a sixth grader, here are our favorite things about Olympia. Cafeteria food, the energy, teachers and new friends, and more independence. As the year goes on, here are some things we are looking forward to. Field trips, new programs and extracurriculars, sea breeze and end-of-year trips, musical concerts and performances, and musical plays.
As you guys can see, Olympia has been up to a lot. We are looking towards a bright future for our school. Mr. Jones brings his joy and excitement to our school, helping everyone with what they need. He also was a great example to our rise expectations from earlier. And to round everything off, I wanted to thank everyone for allowing me and my team to come out today and tell you guys about our school. And I also wanted to thank the administrators, support staff, and the Board of Education for allowing our school to do such spectacular things. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, guys. We're going to have you come up along with the Olympia staff and Dr. Zaffetz. Deputy Superintendent Fleming and Superintendent
Thank you very
Smalling and the
much.
board, and we're going to do a picture.
Okay, that's all right. I'll get one from Brandon later.
I'd like to invite Assistant Superintendent Kalili up to do the Veterans Tax Exemption presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I am going to do this presentation in conjunction with my team colleague, Megan Bradshaw, who is our Director of Finance here at the district. So again, we're going to present some information to the board and to the public regarding the Veterans Tax Exemption and how it pertains to the school property taxes. As we all know, there was a request made to the board to review the Veterans Tax Exemption and then subsequently make a positive decision to go ahead and implement that. We're going to share some information again on how it pertains to the school district, what the impact is to all taxpayers within Greece, and then gather some information at the public hearing for the board to entertain and then help make a decision later on in the program. Oop. Wasn't that quick. So why is the board considering this? To recognize and support the veterans within our community and to provide the tax relief to those who have served our country.
So what is, the veterans tax exemption, what does that mean? Similar to most exemptions, this is a reduction in it would be a reduction in assessed value for qualifying veterans, meaning their school, they would result in a lower school tax bill for them. This shift in the tax difference would then go to non-qualifying property owners. Just to be clear, the school district would remain whole. Currently, in the town of Greece, the Greece Central School District boundaries, there's around 2,600 properties that receive a veterans exemption for town and county taxes. This is the taxes that are due in February. This hearing that we're talking about concerns an addition of a separate exemption for school property taxes that could apply beginning in September of 2026. So I said qualifying veterans before, so who qualifies? Generally, veterans who served honorably during a period of war. In New York State defines the period of war, I won't say them out, they're listed there, would qualify. You could also qualify if you're the spouse or an unremarried surviving spouse of a veteran, and you can only get this exemption on your primary residence.
So the board is considering levels at the town of Greece levels currently in place. There are two types of exemptions that folks can be eligible for. One is the alternative veterans exemption, and the second is the Cold War veterans exemption. You would either qualify for one or the other, but not both. On the alternative veterans exemption, it has to be your primary residence. You have to have served during a designated period of war or received an expeditionary medal. Those periods include the levels or the amounts of the exemption are listed below. If you have a wartime service exemption, you can obtain 15% of your assessed value up to a maximum of $36,000 exempted from tax. If you qualify then for the combat zone service, it's an additional 10% or an additional up to $24,000 added to the wartime service above. And then there's a third category for service-connected disability, which if you qualify for that, you could receive up to another 50% assessment reduction or up to a max of $120,000. On the Cold War exemption, small difference is that you have to, your primary residence has to be that of a person who served during the Cold War. You'd get a basic reduction of 10% capped at $8,000. And again, if you qualified for the service-connected disability, you'd get an additional up to $50,000 or 50% or up to $40,000. Those are the two exemptions and the levels that folks may be able to qualify for. However, there's been another factor that we wanted to point out for this evening that impacts the total value of that exemption, and that's the equalization rate, which we have discussed over the last several years. So what we showed here to kind of drive the point home is back in 2022, the school district within the town of Greece all our homes were assessed at 100%, which meant if your home was assessed at $100,000, you could probably sell it for $100,000. In that scenario, if you were qualified for the wartime exemption, the max was $36,000. You would have received $36,000 reduction in your assessed value for the wartime exemption. However, in 2023, that equalization rate changed to 86%, which reduces that $36,000 down to almost $31,000. In 2024, the equalization rate changed further to 75.12%. So now that $36,000 is worth $27,000 off your assessed value. And currently, and we're estimating, because they do this, the equalization rate for the prior year in 26, we're estimating that the equalization rate will remain at 68%, which means the $36,000 assessment will be worth almost $25,000. As that equalization rate decreases, so will the value of the exemptions, and should the equalization rates continue and make their way back up, it will grow again back to a maximum of $36,000. But that will only be over time and per the town of Greece.
So here we're talking about the impact for non-veterans. Just for this data, that I just want to say thank you to Lauren, Beth, Rebecca from the Town of Greece Assessor's Office. They're the ones that provided this data, answered the questions that we had on veterans exemption. So again, this is based on the Town of Greece exemption levels. If the board were to adopt this, then between 86 and 87 million of taxable assessed value would shift from exempt properties to non-exempt properties, resulting in an increase to the tax rate of about 45 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, or 1.8%. So if we just walk through an example, a home assessed at $225,000 would see an estimated increase to their school tax bill of about $102 for a non-veteran. The savings for qualifying veterans would mean a savings on their school taxes of between $136 and $5,123, depending on the individual qualifications that Romeo talked about. The school, and then just to reiterate, the school district's total tax levy collected would remain the same. So the data that was on the previous slide is based on the 2024 data and doesn't factor in any additional changes that could come out as part of the budget development process or future changes in law or eligibility. It's only on that data that we had from the 2024 tax roll. So if adopted and a veteran currently receives a tax exemption for their town and county taxes, they wouldn't have to do anything. They would receive a tax exemption for their school taxes. Those who moved or had a status change would need to reapply. That's how it currently works. You would work with the Town of Grace Assessor's Office and submit that status change for an updated exemption amount. The deadline for this, again, would be for the 2026 roll, so March 1st of 2026 for, again, if adopted, the September 2026 tax roll. And then really any questions on eligibility, the Town of Grace Assessor's Office, they're the experts in this. They're the ones that process this exemption and they know this detail.
So just closing up with some next steps, we'll have the public hearing. And comments will be taken into consideration by the board. The board will make a decision on a resolution that is in front of them for this evening. And if adopted, we will send the proper notification to the town of Greece to have this in place for September of 2026. Thank you.
I will now call the Veterans Tax Exemption Public Hearing to order. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak at the podium, and there'll be a clock up on the screen. Our first speaker this evening is Mr. Timothy Smith.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Smith. I have been a Greece resident and school taxpayer for 31 years. I'm an Army veteran with a tour in Vietnam and a member of the American Legion Greece Post 468. In 2013, New York State amended the Real Property Tax Law 458 to provide for a veteran school tax exemption. Unfortunately, New York State didn't mandate the school tax exemption like they did the veteran town and county. So New York State unfairly put that burden and responsibility on the Board of Education of each school district. Currently, 50% of the New York State school district have adopted the veteran school tax exemption. In Monroe County, just 4 districts, Gates, Chilai, Brockport, Caledonia, Mumford, and the City of Rochester. We are hopeful that Greece will be number 5. Let me be clear, this is not a full tax exemption. Only those combat veterans who qualify per the existing New York State, Monroe County guidelines on veteran tax breaks will receive a partial property tax reduction. Men and women combat veterans who served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Middle East, and other foreign lands. They left their homes and families to risk their lives and serve our country. This issue is not a veteran versus non-veteran versus whatever debate. Every year, the Greece School Board, when developing a $344 million school budget, has numerous issues to consider and understand how they affect all property owners. It's never an easy task. The 3,829 registered Greece combat veterans paid about $10 million into last year's $125 million school tax bill. 50% of these veterans are over 70 and on a fixed income. Another 30% are over 55 and looking forward to retirement. So these tax breaks will help our senior citizens with their household budgets. The veterans in Greece support their community in many ways. The 1,000 members of the Legion Families of Greece Post 468 with the Power Plunge event in the last few years have raised over $150,000 for the New York State Special Olympics. And year after year, we eagerly donate food, clothing, school supplies, toys, and gift cards to those in need.
Mr. Smith.
We happily support the Greece American Legion baseball team, who were 2 times
Mr.
state
Smith,
champs.
I got your time.
I got 1 paragraph. Can I finish?
No, I'm sorry. I got to be fair to everybody. So you can finish. You got a lot of it. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Ostrander. Good evening. For you, yes.
There we go. Can you hear me? This isn't made for tall people. So, Megan, thank you. Your words that you said at the last meeting resonate with all the veterans that are here and your passion for your family that served. So we thank you and salute you and your family, as well as we salute all the veterans that are here today. We talked last time about finding honor, finding courage, and finding commitment. That was a great presentation that you put on in regards to the tax and the effect that it'll have on those that don't get it. But just asking everybody here to find the courage, say thank you, okay? And be mindful that most of us here are over 55 on fixed income, so every little bit that we can save is worthy. But also, as we left our homes and left our families to go serve in lands that weren't really the best, with brothers and sisters that we lost and brothers and sisters that we've remained friends ever since. We're the ones that run to the front line. Everybody runs away. Bill, Marine, Semper Fi, brother. But just asking to find the courage and the commitment in your hearts to give us this break, okay? And continue I can't think of the words, I'm losing my track here. Let us continue our fine school district, the kids that we had here today. If that's any indication of the students in Greece, we're going to be in fine shape here with the future, because they were great young men and women. So to everybody that served, I salute you. And to the board, please vote in favor of this resolution, and it's much, much appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Perna.
He's taller than me. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for providing me with this forum. My name is Daniel Perna, and I am the commander of the American Legion Post 468 in Greece. I oversee 1,000 veterans and families at that post who are from the town of Greece. I'm a disabled Vietnam veteran who is here today in support of all veterans in the Greece School District. I'm here tonight requesting that you, members of the Greece Board of Education, resolve this partial tax exemption on school taxes with a subsequent vote of yes. If approved, this exemption would definitely help many qualifying veterans on fixed incomes, those with disabilities, and also their surviving spouses. Right now, approximately 3,661 veterans reside in the town of Greece, but not all are property tax owners. Of that 3,661 veterans, 1,320 are Vietnam veterans over the age of 70. We are, as well as to World War II, Korea, and well as the Gulf War, are a diminishing demographic. Believe it or not, we are losing more than we are gaining. I created a petition at my post back in November that I believe Mr. Maloney gave to the board. And we had a couple of hundred signatures, but the point I want to try and make, that 4 members who signed that petition have already passed away. All right? How many veterans have we lost since 2013, when the real property tax law was expanded? In Monroe County, the school districts of the city of Rochester, Gates, Chili, Caledonia, Mumford, and Brockport, as well as a large number of school districts across the state already, in gratitude, provide these veterans exemption. Let's mean thank you for your service and provide all present and future qualified veterans this partial school exemption. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perna. Mr. Dan Klumper? Klumps? Sorry, I don't know if it's my eyes or your writing.
Hi, I'm Dan. I also claim Mark's left over 13 seconds. I was in the U.S. Submarine Force for 7 years, from August 63 to August 70. I see I have two other brothers in here, submarine sailors. We were all on different times, so I'll only speak for myself. We made patrols to prevent the Soviet Union from launching all of its nuclear weapons against the United States and forever changing my way of life. So I didn't fight on the ground, I fought underwater. I was underwater pretty deep when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. So all I'm saying is we sacrificed a lot, a whole lot. 10 weeks underwater, when you get near the end, it doesn't smell very good. We're running low on food. Most of the fresh food lasted maybe a week or two. And then everything after that was whatever. So we weren't just a bunch of young people out there with a very expensive toy. We were doing something that had to be done, or this country wouldn't be this country. So I only want to say my intention was when I get home and when this is all over, which it was, by the way, in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed, I want to be able for everyone in here to go to church, in any church they want to go to on Sunday. I want the teachers to be able to teach not from a syllabus handed to them by a state official that stood in the back of the room and made sure they didn't deviate from it. I wanted to be able to do this, stand in an open forum and speak my piece in a free country. So when you consider your vote, consider what you have and what you haven't lost. There's a whole lot of things that we take for granted. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hitchcock, Taylor Hitchcock? Ms. Hitchcock, sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Hitchcock. I'm a new member of our local Grease Post 468, who has been able to learn some of the great sacrifices of our local heroes that have made for us and in our country. When you hear support our troops, most people envision them on a battlefield, but why stop there? Our troops eventually become local heroes who we support with multiple services on their return home. This helps them adjust to civilian life, find a job, maybe even start a business, find a home, and have the ability and capacity to start a family. We are one of the largest towns in the state, and it's really sad. With a multitude of towns already offering this break to our local heroes, why can't we? Why can't we offer this token of gratitude and support to our local heroes? So please, vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mark Henshin?
My name's Mark Henshin, and I'm also a lifelong resident of the town of Greece. The internet says there are about 4,500 veterans in Greece, less than 4% of our population. Their average age is over 60, and that number is dwindling rapidly year by year. Most have not had children in the school system for 15, 20, or 30 years, yet continue to faithfully pay school taxes. I served in wartime, but not in combat. I cannot speak for those that did, but I do know that I had friends who returned under an American flag, so they can't be here to speak for themselves. They and we served so that you and your loved ones would not have to. Just wondering, what price can you put on that? When you consider that the military is not a 40-hour-a-week job, but 10 to 12 hours a day, sometimes 7 days a week, many of us served for about 10 cents an hour. Let me ask the non-veterans, what are you making an hour to sit here and decide on our request? And what have you given up to be here? 2, 4, 20 years of your life? Where's the money going to come from to fund this request? Well, where did it come from to fund this huge transportation facility or our state-of-the-art town hall complex, which is the envy of most towns in America? I do know that the planning board has requests for hundreds of new homes, which will generate millions of dollars in new taxes, more than enough to make up for this small shortfall, provided adjudicated properly. I'll get to the second page here. And the community continues to grow. Our numbers are shrinking at an alarming rate. This beautiful town would not be possible without the sacrifices made by the veteran community. Plus, we veterans make up a disproportionate amount of those who volunteer their time, talent, and money, again, selflessly in the betterment of this community. Please seriously consider this request. Yes, a skate park, waterwork, and pickleball courts are great for the younger generation, but give serious thought to consider the sacrifice this town's aging veterans have made to get us here. Thank you.
Edward Warzak.
Thank you. My name's Ed Warzak. I'm past commander of the Greece American Legion Post. I've raised 2 children in the Greece Central School District. Both went on to advanced degrees. My daughter is now one of the chief financial officers for the Flom Eye Institute at the University of Rochester. My son is a practicing attorney here in Monroe County. In 2013, New York enacted the Alternative Veterans Exemption, which allows school districts at their discretion to give veterans an exemption on a portion of the properties of their school district tax. Prior to that time, the Alternative Veterans Tax Exemption was applicable only to county, city, town, and village taxes. Since the law was enacted, 254 school districts, about 41% of the entire state of New York, have adopted this exemption. 85% of the districts on Long Island adopted the Alternative Veterans Exemption. This includes 93% in Nassau County, 79% in Suffolk County, and communities just north of New York City also had a large proportion of school districts adopt the exemption. For $102 increase for the new reassessed value, that's less than $10 a month. We're asking non-veterans to pay for the entire sacrifice that most of us that have made here, and some who can't even make that sacrifice because they're not here anymore. What thanks do we give them? Maybe it's about time we did something for them. It's a small price to pay, so everyone gets an equal shot who did so much for this country and this community. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our public hearing on the Veterans Tax Exemption. I declare the hearing closed. Moving on to 4.01, staffing. Can I have somebody move staffing to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Stencil, seconded by Mr. Maloney. Any comments, questions, concerns on staffing? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 7-0. Moving on to GTA MOA additional FTEs. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, seconded by Ms. Malore. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 7-0. Moving on to 13.02, the Veterans Tax Exemptions. Can I somebody move those to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Maloney, seconded by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? All right, we're going to do a roll call vote. I'm going to declare my interest.
I didn't know you were starting with me. Yes, I declare my interest because I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. And I vote, I vote yes.
Okay, Mr. Maloney, we started with you, voted yes. Mr. Butler?
I'll vote yes.
Ms. Millar?
No.
Mr. Stetzel?
Yes.
Ms. Farah?
With honor, yes.
Vice President Farmer?
Yes, and I'd like to say something. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to hear you tonight. I'm voting yes, and my hope is that our VA hospitals continue to give you the same service that my father had, and I was so privileged to go with him and meet his providers. So my vote is yes.
And I just want to thank all veterans. And with having a son that's an active service member, I truly appreciate the sacrifice that you made in the past and that our current soldiers across the world are making on our behalf every single day. And I'm glad Greece Central is one of the largest school districts in the state is going to pass this veterans tax exemption for you. We appreciate your continued support and everything you do for our Greece community. We wish you well, and I'm a yes vote on that. Motion carries 6-1. And we should be clapping for you, not the other way around.
True.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for coming and speaking. It was greatly appreciated. All right, moving on to mid-year strategic plan update. Superintendent Smalley.
All right, I'd like to call our superintendent's cabinet up to present. So before they start, what I'd like to just say is, for as many of you know, our strategic plan is a guiding document. This document drives, as you all know, drives our school improvement plans. It drives our budget process. It drives professional learning that's done across the district. And what you're going to see tonight is a mid-year report on where we stand as of right now as we get to about the halfway mark of our school year. Some of the metrics that are in our plan, we can't report out till the end of the year. They're annual metrics that we don't have that until the end of the year. So what you'll see today is some of the metrics that we're able to measure around the January, February time. And each of the cabinet members will share their portion of what they supervise in today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Smalling. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to be joined at the podium tonight by my team members, Dr. Baker, Dr. Zaffitz, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Larson. And we are delighted to share with you our mid-year report with regards to the strategic plan, to share our progress towards the goals that are articulated within that document. As you all know, our strategic plan is entitled REACH 2027. This is a 5-year plan. It presents a very clear mission and vision for our district. Specifically, this document articulates how we are ensuring that all students have the resources, the access, and the support that they need to achieve academic excellence in order to flourish as responsible, empathetic, and engaged citizens. Now, within this document, we have articulated 3 specific commitments. Commitment 1 is Ignite Learning, Commitment 2 is Cultivate Trust, and Commitment 3 is Expand Opportunity. Our strategic plan lists the processes and metrics that we use throughout the year in order to achieve our mission, our vision, and of course, these 3 commitments. Infused throughout this document as well are the core values that guide our work each and every day, and you can see those core values articulated at the bottom of the slide in front of you. Resilience and respect, excellence with equity, agency and affirmation, courage and collaboration, and humility and honesty.
much. Good evening. So I will start us off with Commitment 1, Ignite Learning. So tonight we're going to be updating you on 5 of the 6 aligned progress measures for this commitment, including professional learning, inclusion for students with disabilities, and ELA and math achievement and annual growth. We'll report on the credit accrual metric at the end of the year as Mr. Smalling shared. This is a mid-year report, and we don't have that data quite yet. So starting off with professional learning hours. So this progress measure aligns with the GTA contract, which mandates 10 hours of choice professional learning for each of our GTA unit members. This graph shows progress towards the goal. Total professional learning hours indicate the number of choice professional learning hours conducted by GTA staff throughout the year. This data is pulled from Frontline Monthly, and it's updated. As you can see, we've made really great incremental gains over the past 3 years since we put this into the contract. Now that staff has a better understanding of what the offerings are and what their options are. So the hours that were outlined on that graph are only inclusive of the hours that were completed outside of the workday. And again, these are the choice professional learning hours that the employees have chosen for themselves. Our teachers and other staff participate in PL year-round, during the workday, after work, on weekends, and over the summer. You'll see listed here some of the various ways that our leaders are developing meaningful professional learning for our staff. The offerings for choice PL hours have increased significantly over the past 3 years, now with many principals and school teams aligning their collective work with additional opportunities to expand that learning. So there's definitely some overlap between what they're doing in the building and the choice PL that's being offered so that things are aligned and consistent. As a district, we've also dedicated full time on full day release days to focus on PLCs as well as data dives, which allow school teams focused time to dig into their data and strategically plan next steps.
A second metric that's associated with this particular commitment is the percentage of special education students who are integrated into general education settings throughout the year. So why exactly are we trying to promote integration? So this notion of integration is having our students with special needs and learning disabilities learn alongside their non-disabled peers. It helps to foster an inclusive environment. It presents opportunities for those students to learn from one another and really does contribute to the academic excellence, not only of our students who have disabilities, but also for our non-disabled students as well, ultimately resulting in better outcomes for all students. So if you look closely at this metric, you'll see here at the mid-year point, we're a little bit off track in terms of the integration of our students based on where we were from last year, but not too far off. This graph captures roughly 200 of our kindergarten through 5th grade level students. Part of the reason why we see a little bit of a drop-off this year is because we're reestablishing that baseline each and every year. So the students move on to a new grade level, and then we're using our response to intervention, our RTI process, to really determine what are the appropriate integration opportunities for those students. How can we maybe move them into a general education classroom, be it math, ELA, science, or maybe some other type of general education setting, like an extracurricular activity, to really, again, create those opportunities for our students to interact with their same-aged peers.
So next we have our K achievement data from our universal screeners. So before I dig into the data, I want to clarify a few things because this data is always a little bit confusing. So first of all, prior to this year, at the K-5 level, we did have the iReady diagnostic, but at 6-8, we were using something called the reading inventory, or the RI. Well, that's no longer offered, so we shifted this year. 6-8 is also getting iReady. So there's that little caveat. Another note about the winter data. In the fall, we don't require our kindergarten students to take the diagnostic as they're getting ready for school. So the winter time for a lot of our kindergarten students is the first time they've actually taken this diagnostic, so it affects growth in their levels. And same thing for 6-8. This is our first year our 6-8 students in ELA are taking this. So to try to kind of balance how much we're assessing students, we're only requiring it in the fall and the spring. So that being said, I just want to talk a little bit about what the iReady diagnostic is, because it's a little different than a traditional assessment. It's computer adaptive. That means as students get questions right, the questions get harder. As they get them wrong, it gets easier, and it finds that just right fit. I always used to explain it to students, it's like trying to find that right shoe size, right? Sometimes it's too big, sometimes it's too small. We're finding what that level is for students. But it also does that by domain. And by that, I mean in ELA, it assesses them in phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, and comprehension, and it combines all of that to place the students at a grade level. So when we see that 55% at the end of last year, that means 55% of students scored within their grade level standards when they combined all those scores together. Now you might look at that and say, well, why did it drop all the way to 24%? So when I think about that, let's just think about that. At the end of last year, 55% were scoring within their grade level. Now they've shifted to a whole new grade. So at the start of the year, 24% are already scoring in their new grade level standards. So in a sense, that 24% is kids who are actually ahead of the game a little bit. And then by winter, we're up to 40%, and then we're hoping to begin to see some acceleration in this ELA data with our rollout of our core and all of our training and coaching we're doing for our students and staff. In math, you can see the math achievement on these screeners is a little bit lower than ELA, but we do see an upward trend, which mirrors what we're seeing in the state tests. Another question I've often gotten is, why is the start of the year so low for math relative to ELA? And part of that is the structure of the standards. So in ELA, the standards are more continuous. So it's a little bit easier to access the next grade level because it's just increasing in complexity. But in math, when you go to a new grade level, you might have completely new topics you've never seen before. The example I always give is third grade. In third grade, there's fractions and multiplication and division. Students don't learn about those at all in second grade. So when they come to third grade, it's a little bit harder at the start of the year to score in my new grade level standards because I might not have learned about those topics. Whereas in ELA, it's a little more continuous. But what we really try to focus on, even more than just achievement, is also growth, right? So combining those two things together. So this shows the typical growth, the median typical growth. So what is typical growth in iReady? It's individualized for every student in our district. Every student, based upon where they place in the fall, get a average growth metric that iReady gives them that represents 1 year growth, what the typical growth is for that student. So 100% would represent 1 year growth. So at the end of last year, our median growth level was 119%. That means half the students got more than that and half the students got less. So half of our students are getting 119% or more. They're really accelerating and getting more than 1 year of growth, but half was also less than that. And some of that half that's less is still over 100%, but some is certainly even below that. And so the beauty of this system is it allows us to dig in student by student and see who is getting low growth and what can we do differently for those students and really target in. In math, you see that growth going up as well. One note that's kind of concerning is that the middle of the year growth is actually going down. And so why is that? As we've dug into that to try to understand it, again, some of it comes to those standards. In math, at the start of the year, as we continue to refine our curriculum, we're really trying to build that solid foundation at the start of the year so we can accelerate growth later on. But that means maybe we haven't gotten to all of the topics. Students might not have even been exposed to some of the standards. But as they do in the second half of the year, we begin to see that acceleration. At the same time, we clearly still have a lot of work we need to do. So we're really digging into the standards, looking at what we can do differently for our students. Our new math director, Audra All, is exploring new intervention programs to ensure we're providing targeted support for our struggling students. And at the end of the month, hopefully actually on Thursday, New York State is releasing numeracy briefs, similar to the literacy briefs that we saw a few years ago in ELA. So we're looking forward to digging into those and see implications for us moving forward.
Commitment 2 is cultivate trust, and as it says at the bottom of the slide there, we're really committed to creating a school district that acts with honesty and care, and one that's really aligned with the core values that I alluded to earlier in this presentation. This particular commitment measures a couple of different goals that we are working on, goals around staff retention and equitable hiring practices, which really aren't appropriate for a mid-year update. We tend to share those at the beginning of the school year. Ms. Larson and her team will report on that that later this calendar year. We also focus on perception survey data from students, family, and staff. You'll hear from Dr. Zaffis momentarily on that. But also this commitment really focuses on the notion of shared decision-making and cultivating those trusting relationships and that open communication amongst all the stakeholders within our district. So to that end, a data point that we want to share with you here is our shared decision-making committee makeup. You can see two separate sets of bar graphs here on this particular slide. Building level school improvement teams, we measure what the number of teams that have at least one staff member, a parent, and or a student on that school improvement team. The students are not really measured within the school improvement teams, not necessarily appropriate to have students on our school improvement teams, but you can see that we are making gains and making sure that we have parents as represented stakeholders on our school improvement teams. For our district committees, we have that same standard, that same metric, where we want there to be staff members, we want there to be parents, and we also want there to be students, and we're proud to report that 100% of our district-level teams and committees have a member from each one of those stakeholder groups. Shared decision-making is something that we've worked actively on. You've heard quite a bit of presentations on the work that we've been doing over the past 2 years. Just last year, we committed to 4 full days of release in which buildings and their school improvement teams were invited to training with the Teacher Union Reform Network to really articulate the ways in which we can ensure shared decision-making is happening within our buildings. The culmination of that work was a formalized shared decision-making charter that was created in each and every building that aligns with our district guidance on shared decision-making. We continue to recruit parents on a recurring basis to make sure that our committees all have parent representation. And this year, in our second youth summit, the plan for this spring is to utilize that opportunity to have our district committees present to our student groups, our student leaders from each of our middle schools and high schools, to hear from them about the ways in which we can make sure that our district committees are working towards the goals that they as students have. So we're going to cultivate that exchange of ideas between committees, committee members and students at our youth summit this spring.
Good evening, everyone. Our perception survey, our annual perception survey, is one data point that we use that we believe is a reflection of our stakeholder perception of trust, using different types of questions to try and capture that accurately. The survey is given every January over a 2-week window to students on grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 12, staff, and parents. Students and staff typically have time allotted during the workday, and parents are encouraged to fill out the survey using newsletters and reminders at school events. We also have several parent exchanges happening at every school, which give us the qualitative data to use for improvement, but also provide a space for parents to complete the survey for that school. Our questions are answered on a 5-point Likert scale, and these charts measure the positivity rating of the responses. Neutral responses don't factor into the positivity rating. As for our response rates for 2024-25, this year, we had over 1,000 teachers respond to the survey, 5,000 plus students, and nearly 2,000 parents respond to the survey this year. And the survey results for both the district and the school buildings are integrated as one of multiple improvement measures in the school improvement plans and the school comprehensive education plans as required through ESSA for our identified schools. So some sample questions that fall into the bucket of cultivate trust for families. Staff at this school care about what families think. This school communicates how important it is to respect the practices of all cultures. For students in grades 3 through 5, my teachers care about me. 6 through 12, teachers at my school understand me as a person. And for our staff, the school inspires me to do my very best, to do the very best at my job, and school rules are applied equitably to all students. Just some samples of questions that fall into that cultivate trust bucket that was measured in the survey. Also wanted to touch on restorative practices as one of our talking points tonight, something that we've come to before the board and spoke on a few times. A common misconception about restorative practices is that they're used to substitute for traditional disciplinary consequences. In reality, restorative practices are integrated into our behavioral response system to work in partnership with traditional consequences to support and teach our students. You've seen examples of this in our highlights of our Peer Accountability Council and peer mediation initiatives. In addition, the great majority of restorative practices work is to proactively develop relationships and community. When successfully integrated into schools' culture, restorative practices create safe and productive learning spaces where students develop relevant skills and positive relationships. Examples of this work can be found district-wide through our Leader in Me program, the Olympia Rise initiative, which our students spoke about tonight, and our two-day professional learning series on Tier 1 restorative practices for staff. We strongly believe that these initiatives and more have all contributed to a steady rise in this trust metric over the past few years, and thank the Board of Education for your continued support of our restorative practices work. Moving on to commitment 3. This is our Expand Opportunities commitment, committed to ensuring that schools receive the resources, materials, and personnel necessary to provide students greater access to rigorous and enriching opportunities. There are several metrics that we're going to report out on tonight for the mid-year. I have the first one here with our SEL screener. The positivity rating, again, is very similar to the perception survey in that this metric measures student positivity ratings on the 5 SEL competencies of relationship skills, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and self-awareness. These charts show the percentage of survey respondents who answered positively in each of the SEL competency categories as it relates to their personal capacity. Students in grades 3 through 12 fill the survey out themselves, and teachers complete the survey for their K-2 students. Screeners are given once every fall, and a second optional window is opened mid-year for schools who would like to progress monitor as a result of their school improvement work. Similar to the perception survey, I'm just going to go through a few samples. A sample question for self-management for students is, how often did you get your work done right away instead of waiting till the last minute? Sample question for relationship skills is, are you able to help your peers who may be in conflict and encourage finding a solution? For social awareness, how much did you care about other people's feelings? For self-awareness, I am able to identify, recognize, and name my emotions in the moment. And for responsible decision-making, when things go wrong for you, how calm are you able to remain? We've done a ton of work to build student capacity and understanding of the competencies. SEL competencies are taught and assessed in our elementary schools, largely through Leader in Me, and conveyed to parents on our report card. We've done work to try and integrate explicit skill-based lessons into our secondary schedule as well, through our district-created resources and online responsibility lessons primarily targeted at cyberbullying through Win at Social. Skill-based instruction is also woven into our pathways and New York State employability profile, our strategies for success class, and the senior portfolio project. Invites to that will be coming shortly for a little plug there. Research echoes what we have heard in our own community that skill gaps in the workforce continue to widen. All stakeholders identified these competencies as target skills. We are still working at aligning our SEL instruction with the Greece Central profile of a graduate that is explained in detail in our REACH strategic plan, and anticipate that the forthcoming Board of Regents adoption of the New York State Portrait of a Graduate will serve as a lever by providing a roadmap to further integrate these skills into our core instruction. We strongly believe that a focus on these competencies will allow us to achieve our strategic vision of empowering students to flourish as responsible, empathetic, and engaged citizens.
Okay, so one other metric that we have been tracking is the number of elementary extracurricular clubs that students are engaged in. The purpose of after-school clubs is to engage students and to increase their motivation. We also have communities, school site coordinators that are intentionally embedding more academic focuses into the after-school clubs, such as vocabulary, math, and reading skills that help support each building's school improvement goals. And also project-based learning. So you'll see that the number of clubs has increased as we start to find out what students are interested in and also offer some of those extensions that will support the academic learning. The last is around the number of lead innovator partnerships. We define lead innovator partners as those that have a mutually beneficial partnership between a community-based organization, a faith-based organization, or a business, and that also supports our strategic plan outcomes, and that has been in place for longer than a year. So we believe that quality over quantity is what is important. So you see that we haven't necessarily added additional partnerships, but are really focusing on sustaining the partnerships that already exist. And the last slide just sort of highlights the multitude of diverse partnerships that we have. And I know that Kelly Sperduto meets with these partnerships quarterly through a community partnership quarterly plan, where they're talking about making sure that the partnerships are mutually beneficial and talk about next steps. So those are all of the updates for the mid-year report. Are there any questions?
Mr. Butler?
So I want to start by saying, one of the ways that we build trust in the community is by not just talking about when everything's going perfectly, but when we look at a dashboard like this where there's some areas for improvement. And I think it's the philosophy of we either win or we learn. And I think that I'm proud to be part of a district that really looks at these things closely and looks to improve where there are opportunities. So I had a few questions about some of the slides, and I can take them one at a time, Sean, if you want.
Sure, that way everybody gets a shot.
Yep.
That'd be great. Thanks, Todd.
So working from the back of the deck forward, the first one I had was around the SEL screener positivity rating, where, the trend does not look like we're on track to hit our goal at the end of the strategic plan period. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on why that might be and what we're doing to course correct.
Yeah, we've talked about that quite a bit. Before I mention some of our thoughts on why we may not be making a ton of progress there, I just wanted to circle back to the upcoming work through the state and I guess it is really related. Really, the effort coming from New York State and everything we're hearing is that SEL skill instruction can't exist on an island or in a bucket. And in a lot of ways, especially at the secondary level, that's been our approach, has been to try to carve out time to really dig in and explicitly teach students SEL skills. And a lot of kind of the research that the state has been going through about successful SEL initiatives has been about really integrating that into our core instruction, which we see at the elementary level through Leader in Me. So in the future, a lot of that work is going to be to try to do that, to try to integrate those things. And we, anticipate that could be something that could be a lever to move those in the right direction. We've also talked about the fact that the more that students learn about what capacity or what proficiency in one of the competencies really means, that they may understand that they're not necessarily at the level that they thought they were previously. So that's one hypothesis as to why the indicators have remained rather flat rather than increasing. So those are some hypotheses. We're trying to still kind of get creative and figure out different ways of embedding, explicitly teaching, and assessing the SEL competencies. And we've definitely heard through the Graduation Measures Initiative that's something that we're going to be there's going to be a framework for that through the state that's coming in short order. So we anticipate having an update on how we can do more of that work.
Thank you.
Mr. Maloney?
I think it's page 9, the graph on page 9. It's the K-8 reading. It seems like is it working? I mean, you take a look at the graphs over the last 4 or 5 years, and it kind of, in the beginning, it's close. Midway through the year, it kind of looks like doesn't move. The graph doesn't move that much.
So you're looking at the reading, KI Ready reading?
Yes, now
Yes.
page 9.
Yep. I just don't have page numbers on my document, sorry. So this is our first year full implementation of our core. So even our end of year numbers at the end of last year was only partial implementation. So
Okay.
As with any new program, it takes a little bit of time to get everybody trained as part of that implementation. So as we are closely monitoring the data at all levels, not just this data. We have multiple different data points that we're looking at. We do feel like it's being impactful. Street data from teachers, as they've talked about students who received ARC core instruction last year and are now in their classrooms. They say they're seeing a significant difference in what those students can do. So we're excited to see as that grows year after year and the students are in the program for multiple years to accelerate that growth. So we are seeing positive signs, but I agree it might not be showing up here yet. This is what we consider more of like a lag measure that's going to happen over the next few years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Ms. Farah?
Thank you guys for doing this. I kind of want to reiterate what my colleagues have said here. On page, well, we say it all the time, and we kind of hit that a couple months ago regarding the 4% of personal growth. It kind of goes along with what Mr. Butler and Mr. Maloney were saying. You know, if we're not seeing the positivity rates, 4% of growth, I think we would want to strive just a tad more. 4% seems very low on that. Can you kind of give us, I know you're working on more initiatives, I know it's a 7-year strategic plan, but we're already more than halfway there. If we're not going to reach those goals, mid-year, are we trying to look at other options? I know you kind of did, but can you hit anything more on this?
So yes, the 4% growth over 5 years is based upon how New York State uses their ESSER growth, right? Looking at 20% growth over a 5-year span. So we agree. We want to accelerate even more than that, though. And so again, I'm not just looking at the mid-years, I'm looking at those end of years. And you're right, we're not hitting that 4% every year. So that's why we're doing intensive training. We have about 100 PD coaching sessions for ELA ARC Core this year to try to drastically overhaul our ELA curriculum and provide tons of support for our teachers, our administrators, and staff as we're really digging in. So that is throughout this entire year. It is a deep dive, and we're looking at it. So we're in the middle of that change right now, and that's the hard part when you're in the middle of a change, right? You want the results to be instant, but sometimes you got to like continue through that to see the results of that change. So, but we're always looking at data, getting feedback from students, staff, and this summer I know there will be heavy curriculum work. We've already gotten some feedback about the writing rubrics and how that aligns to New York State and how we might beef that up to adjust for students. So that is an ongoing, continual process to keep improving.
Thank you.
Vice President Farmer?
Just to follow up on Mr. Butler. So the SEL work, how they're looking at integrating it throughout the day, I was, not in this district, but in other districts, I was a contractor who was using a tool for that exact purpose. So we would go into the classroom. Teachers were volunteering. I think we might have had a couple teachers from here who did. And what was so, to me at least, what I thought was so powerful about this tool is it's little teeny tiny things that you can do during the day, high school included. I visited high school classes, and it allows the teacher, the educator, it's just good stuff that we do with kids. But when we tend to put it in a box, sometimes it doesn't make as big, I would say most times it doesn't make as big of an impact as it does when it's integrated into our instruction. So thank you. I'm glad to hear that about the up and coming.
Mr. Butler?
Thank you. So I had a question on the on slide 7, which is the percentage of special K-5 special ed students integrated into academic or special area general education settings. And I got 2 questions. One, I'm not sure if there is a goal for this. I hear what you're saying, that, and I understand like the denominator changes every year, right? So that because you have a different cohort of students, so that makes sense to me. Do you establish a goal every year for like this cohort? This year, we think an appropriate percentage is this number, or not? So that's one question. And And are you concerned at all about I know we'd want this to be, always want everything to be a higher number, but do you feel like the 10% or so decrease that we see from 23, 24 to 24, 25 is what you would have expected?
So to answer your first question, I'd say we're striving to get 100%. We really want to see all of our students have some type of integration opportunity. So that's going to look very differently for each and every student. It might just be this student is really just ready to attend this after-school homework club or this math club. So that's going to be their opportunity to not be just within their self-contained classroom with their peers, but to now be with general education students after school in that particular club. For another student, it might be, they're ready to dip into that second grade general education setting for math time, half an hour a day, every day. It's going to vary based on students. So the message that we've really been giving our building administrators at the K-5 level is we want to shoot for 100%. Last year, we were really intentional about using our leadership time to provide some really concrete, specific professional development for all of our administrators, K-5, on a monthly basis with around integration. And for some principals, this was old hat. This is something that they've been doing. It's part of their RTI system. It's something that's really infused into their building culture. For other buildings, it was some new learning and really kind of opening their eyes to the various ways in which you can make sure integration happens. Truthfully, in the spirit of honesty and transparency, I think we were a little surprised that we did see a little bit of a dip from last year. In talking through it with our department, our special education department, and as a team, we really do think it's probably part of that RTI process. So response to intervention, you're having weekly meetings to discuss students and their needs. And so our hunch, though we haven't confirmed this, is there might be a little bit of a backlog in kind of cycling students through a formalized RTI process where we can look at data and say, you know what, this student is ready for that math time during the school day or needs to just go to that after-school club. So we're hopeful that between now and the end of the year, we're going to see that metric go up and hopefully surpass our end-of-year number from the 23-24 school year. But yes, we're a little disappointed that it did drop off a bit in January.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? Yep, sorry.
Go ahead.
Great, thank you for that. Board Member Maloney brought our attention to slide 9, and the same initial question is around the goal, because it says, it doesn't have a metric that we're shooting for or a target there. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. I think the trend line looks, like it's trending in a general positive direction, so I feel good about that, but I'm wondering if there is a goal. I also wonder if, and these questions apply to ELA and math, I wonder if you disaggregate that by grade, because this is, the way I read this, it's the iReady score for kindergarten through 8th grade, which is feels like a huge group of students, and I'm guessing that disaggregation gives you a lot of opportunities to improve.
That's a great question. That's actually part of the role I do, is I provide every building and with targeted data. So all of this is broken down not only by grade, but every demographic. So they can look at just special ed students or by race or by gender and all those types of things. And so we really dig into that, and then we can drill in and find out exactly who those students are. And so we're looking at, hey, this group of students is getting low growth. What's going on with them? Do we see any trends? What can we do differently? Or these students are getting high growth. What's helping them be successful? So we are certainly looking for that. When you say a target goal for iReady is not the only thing we look at, right? On a strategic plan, we can't have too many metrics, but also in reading, we have our ERLA scores. So it's something that comes with our core program, and that gives those very specific reading levels, and that allows us to diagnose even more, and we're really trying to see, are we getting students up to that reading level? So we're looking at multiple data points together to try to really hone in on what we're doing. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, I appreciate it, especially the first part of it. I guess the question about what the target is, it still remains a little bit for me. Or do you look at, like, the trend line moving in the right direction until we hit 100%, we're going to be hoping that the trend line is moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean,
or-
it should continuously keep going up, yes. All of our students should be hopefully scoring within their grade level standards. So, but we do kind of internally have that from our ESSA, kind of from the state, thinking about 20% over 5 years is kind of a goal. But to me, even that's not good enough, right? We're always just trying to do better and better. But when I'm only seeing 1 or 2% growth in a year, we're thinking we want to do better than that. So shooting for at least that 4%, if not more, every single year.
Great, thank you. Megan's got one, and I have just one more, I promise.
Okay, good. Ms. Farrar.
Okay, just make that quick. I know we were talking about iReady with reading. We kind of kicked off the science of reading and phonemic awareness, phonics, things like that. Do we see anything coming down the pipe with science of math? I know that was talked about. Will this help, hinder? Are we going to see more, maybe?
Yeah, so I actually think it's Thursday, New York State's coming out with their numeracy briefs, right? So the science of reading was very much tied and brought out in those literacy briefs that New York State released, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. Math, New York State's coming out with them for math, I believe, on Thursday. And so our math director, Audra, is going to BOCES for that presentation. And we're interested to dig in and see the implications on that for our overall program and instructions for PD and curriculum work and all those types of things. So
Good to know, thank you.
we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Mr. Maloney.
I guess I'm a little confused. And the confusion is page 7 and page 9. All right, the IK reading, and is special education integrated special education, is that included or not inclusive of general ed scores? How do I put this in a nice way?
You don't have to be nice. That's okay.
I mean, all of our children are together. Is that the score of everything, whether it's general ed or whether it's special ed or the inclusion piece? Is that why these graphs are?
So are you referring to the graph on page 9 with the iReady?
And also with the special ed scores that my colleague here mentioned.
So if I could clarify graph 7.
Yeah.
So that's the percent of students out of roughly 200, 197 to be exact, K through 5 students who are in a self-contained setting. So like our 1211s, for instance, okay? That's the percent of those 197 students that haven't had an opportunity, whatever that might look like, to be in a general education setting. So it might be, as I said earlier, a half an hour of math in a general education class. They leave that self-contained classroom, and they're going to go challenge themselves, quite frankly, push themselves in this general education setting, because through that response to intervention process that we have, the teacher said, you know what? This student is ready for that. They're ready to be challenged a little bit, and this is going to be really good for them to help scale them up a little bit. It might be that they go to math for half the day every day. It might be that they just go to that after-school club. It's going to vary by student, but as of January in this school year, 51% of our special education students, of that 197, have had that opportunity. That's what that particular graph speaks to.
And Bill, maybe I could clarify, because you mentioned 9, the assessment 9. That's an assessment data that does include all of our students.
Correct.
Special ed, gen ed students are included in 9 when it comes to the reading scores.
That's what I guess that's what I wanted to
Yeah,
hear.
2
Thank
different
you.
graphs, yeah.
Mr. Butler.
And this last one, I promise. And this is a bunch of kudos. So I think the fact that you got 1,000 employees to take the survey is amazing. Take a bow, Gina. I think the fact that you got 5,000 students to take the student perceptions survey, I'm sure they had some incentives to do that in class time and that kind of thing, but it's still great that 5,000 students, like when people are doing market research and they have a total population, they get almost 50% of that population to take the survey. First of all, you got really projectable data. And second of all, that just those response rates are remarkable. And the fact that 2,000 parents who've got a lot going on, in addition to taking a school survey, took the time to complete the survey, that says something about the level of engagement that you've got from all three of those audiences. So I wanted to give a kudo on that.
Yeah, I'll just offer a quick comment. We're definitely very appreciative of all the parents who completed the survey. Our number has been steadily growing. I think that's due to some efforts on our part, but also, parents going the extra mile to take the time, whether they have 1, 2, 3 kids in the district, to complete their surveys. So we really appreciate that. And to your comment about the something that you said just jogged my memory of the questions and the reliability of the data, the sample size you were talking about. It also, we are seeing that the questions year over year, there's incremental changes. They tend to be improvements. There's also some that have gone the other way. But the fact that there's no wild swings in the data kind of goes along with that reliability piece too, on the scale and on the questions themselves.
Right.
Just one other note I wanted to mention on the perception survey. It's kind of very closely related to the SEL work that I spoke about a little bit on Commitment 3. And I just wanted to reiterate that student perceptions and student SEL competencies are, in our opinion, very closely linked, and that's why we put so much effort into trying to find the right way to promote those skills in students. In large part, that's the beauty of the Leader in Me program that we have. Because when I said earlier that we're looking for ways to integrate the SEL skill-based instruction into our core instruction, it doesn't discount the explicit teaching of those competencies. So there's the direct instruction of those, but also integrated. The direct instruction is integrated throughout the day and not a standalone. We believe that is going to help and has helped with both our perceptions, our student perceptions, but then also their competencies as well.
Great. So my one question on the perception survey, which I wanted to celebrate that too, because great success on that. So kudos to the whole team for that. I'm curious as to why it's just instructional staff and not all staff. So I assume that includes, everybody who's not in the classroom is not included in that number. I assume we're surveying those folks too?
We survey, so for this particular perception survey, it is just teachers.
Okay.
I remember having the dialogue years ago. Can you articulate that?
Anyone is welcome to take it. They could just skip. There's just a lot of instructional questions that not all staff may be able to answer. So if anyone can take it, it's available, and they can skip some of those questions. But the questions are more geared towards those who are in the classroom.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because we look at every month when we get the status of open positions, we don't have a lot of open positions in the instructional staff. We have a lot of open positions in the other areas. So it seems like maybe an opportunity to think about maybe being more thinking about a survey for the non-instructional staff as well. So I think, but notwithstanding, kudos to the team for that. And my last two kudos are on the progress towards typical growth. We are well ahead of our end of the strategic planning period target for that. So kudos to the team on that.
Thank you. Moving on to 25-26 budget update. Superintendent Smalling.
Yes, and I will call Romeo Kalili up for this presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you again. Megan and I are again going to split this presentation. So one of our goals, this is again year 13, I believe, of the tax cap calculation. We do this annually with you to review the calculation. Our hope, again, is to provide the board with a better understanding, and the board and the public with a better understanding of how the tax levy is calculated. It's not a number we pull out of the hat. It's not a number we just say, hey, we're short, we have a gap, the levy's going to be this to close the gap. It's a calculation, and hopefully with some information here tonight, you'll have a better understanding of how this is done. The tax cap, again, is not, is a calculation that sets the tax levy for the school district. It is not the assessed value of the homes or the homes in the district. It is not the tax rate for 25-26. It literally just establishes the tax levy that we're going to use for the upcoming year. And each school district that goes through the calculation has a different outcome depending on the situation and the variables in their calculation.
So this first factor we're going to look at is the tax-based growth factor. This is provided by the Department of Taxation and Finance, and it's the new construction, home improvements, any sort of capital improvement, that brick and mortar growth within the district. It doesn't include new pilots, so Romeo will talk about pilots in a little bit. We've had a lot of senior housing facilities in the that have been built in the district. Those would not count towards our growth each year. So the tax-based growth factor for Greece Central in 25-26 is 1.0021. This chart shows the tax-based growth factor over the years for Greece. You can see that it's really volatile, definitely not predictable, I would say. So it can be as little as zero growth, like we saw in 13-14, and then, as you can see in 25-26, we did dip from last year to the 1.0021. And then we always chart our tax-based growth factor against the other school districts within the county. We're typically in the middle half, I would say, year over year. This year, we're a little bit on the lower end. Again, but that changes. The average for the county was 1.0058. And then just to say the highs and lows, Penfield had a high of 1.0136, and Gage Triley did not have growth this year, so they were the 1.000.
Okay, second factor is the pilot payments that Megan just spoke to. The term pilot is an acronym for payments in lieu of taxes. This is determined through the IDA and the CMUDA, the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency. Basically, there are agreements that are made with the town and the county to obtain some tax breaks in exchange for other community benefits and jobs within the area. And typically, they're set at a fixed schedule, so they may say for a 10 or 15-year period, rather than paying tax on the full value of the property, we're going to pay a fixed amount each year, or an amount that changes each year, or we're going to have a percentage off the assessed values. Typically, it starts at maybe 100% and then goes down 10% a year, and then 10 years later or 15 years later, they go back onto the tax rolls. We don't have any control over those. We're normally asked about them, if we approve them or not, but in reality, they're approved by the CMUDA and the county. We don't really have a say, but we are at least notified of them so that we can at least be aware of them and include them in the calculation. Current pilots, we thought we'd note a couple of large ones here. We've got this Li-Cycle North America hub on McLaughlin Road. This is a lithium-ion battery recycling plant. It is a large footprint. It's going to be in the neighborhood of a $500 million building when it's completed. They have been having some financial and legal issues with this plant, so you've seen construction go on and off on it. But it is at least moving forward. It's currently assessed at about $45.2 million, and right now we are taxing them at a kind of a tax roll pace, but we're expecting the pilot to be coming through for this at any point in time. We have a new pilot coming on that we spoke about a couple board meetings ago called Clear Choice Building. They're a hearing and balance headquarters, about a 30,000 square foot facility worth about $1.5 million right now on Canal Landing. And we have a future pilot going in called Waffleator. which is an LLC. It's at Westridge Road. It's the Elm Grove Plaza. Our understanding is it may replace what currently resides in the Sam's Club portion of the plaza at the end there. It's a food manufacturing and cold storage facility. Right now assessed at about almost $5 million. And I did kind of look it up, and I'll just say this for some laughs, but they're currently able to produce up to 840 million waffles per year. So it is quite the operation out there that will be located in that building.
The next factor is the allowable growth factor. This, again, is provided by the Department of Taxation and Finance. It represents a lesser of 2% or CPI, CPI being the Consumer Price Index, which is really the inflationary change over a year. We get this factor in January, which was 2.95%. So the allowable growth factor for this year that we'll use in this calculation will be 2%, because it's the lower of 2%, or CPI, which was 2.95. This is the factor that people think about when we talk about tax cap. They think we're capped at that 2%, but as you'll see, as we've seen over the years, that there's a lot of different factors that go into this calculation that could put you above or below that 2%. This chart shows the line on this graph represents actual CPI, and the chart portion, I guess, the bar chart represents allowable growth factor. So where these two intersect or overlap would be when CPI was at or below 2%. You can see the numbers over the years have gone significantly up. In 23, 24, it was at 8%. But again, we're still capped at that 2%. So if we wanted to go anything over that, we would be outside of the tax cap calculation, and you would really need a supermajority to pass.
One of the final factors is the capital cost exclusion, and we talk about this a lot, but basically what it says is it's the difference between what are we paying out in debt service, how much are we paying out to pay off our debt for the year, minus what we're getting back from the state. That difference is added to the calculation to get to the final levy. We, for years now, have had two portions of this. The first portion is the tax levy to pay for the local costs for the grease exclusion, and then 3 or 4 years ago, the state allowed BOCES capital costs to be included as well, so now there's that portion as well. The BOCES capital portion, we actually pay expenses. We contribute to the BOCES capital projects that they have going or are saving for, and therefore we get aid back. So similar to our calculation, what's our debt minus our aid, it's the same thing with BOCES. How much are we paying out? How much are we getting back? And that difference, again, is an allowable exclusion to calculate the debt service. Megan will run through the numbers just real quick.
Yeah, so on the top left there is our debt service number. What's in there is really the principal and interest that we pay on debt and the transfer to capital for the smaller projects. Right under that is the projected building aid that we are anticipating, and under that is the projected transportation aid to give us our net local share. So each year we talk about how we work with our financial advisors to manage this exclusion to that 2.7 number. So that number right under the net local share is the transfer from debt service. So we're strategically using debt service fund to reduce that capital exclusion to that 2.7 that we've been managing to. And then this portion of the capital exclusion is really for BOCES. So we start with the district portion, and then, as Romeo noted, we add in the BOCES expenses, our portion of that, and then subtract out the BOCES aid. leaving the, around $3 million of the capital exclusion for the current year. And then this is just a summary, putting all these factors that we just talked about together. The top line is the prior year levy. On line 2, we add in the tax-based growth factor, that 1.0021 we first talked about. We multiply that. We add back our prior year pilots and remove our prior year capital exclusion. That gives us our adjusted prior year levy on line 6. We multiply that by the allowable growth factor. Again, this year it's going to be 2%. It's 2% or CPI. And we subtract out our current year pilots to give us our tax levy limit. This next slide is just bringing over that tax levy limit before exclusions, and then we subtract out the current year capital exclusions that we just went through. That leaves us with our maximum allowable tax levy for 25-26 of around $128 million. That's an increase of $2.6 million, or 2.07% increase. And we will submit this tax cap calculation. There's a requirement for school districts to submit that to the New York Office of the State Comptroller by March 1st. Any questions?
Mr. Butler?
Just to test my understanding, because I always feel like I'm hanging on by my fingernails with these conversations. So we have the 2% tax cap, and to go over the 2% tax cap, we would need the supermajority vote. The reason that the number at the bottom of slide 14 there is 2.07 is because of all those exclusions that we just talked about. So can actually, no? Damn it.
A little bit. In this
Swing and a
situation.
miss.
Yeah.
I thought I had it.
The, this line 14, this maximum allowable tax levy, that if we stay at that level or below, we need 50% plus one vote. If we go $1 over that or $1 million over that, we need a supermajority. In past years, this maximum allowable tax levy could be 2.5% or 3.5% or 4%, but it's still the maximum allowable levy. It's just so, as Megan said, it happens that this happens to be 2% for this year. In prior years, that maximum allowable tax levy, when, and some folks may remember when the mall came off the pilot and went back on the tax roll, we were up in the 4 or 5% was the growth in the levy. But we still only needed 50% plus one vote because we were under the calculated max. So they're related, but they don't tie and correlate directly. It's this number, line 14 number, is what drives 50% or supermajority. Anything above that number, regardless of whether it's a 2%, 1%, or 7% increase, dictates 50% or supermajority.
Right. Okay.
Thanks. Does that help?
Anything else?
I think I have a question.
Oh, boy. Mr. Maloney?
I'm sorry. I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around this. The allowable growth factor on page 9, I think it was on page 9. It shows in 23, 24, 25, it was 8%. Is that inflationary?
Yes, the CPI is the inflation rate.
And we can't compensate for that?
No. So when, in those last 4 years, when going back to 2021 on this chart, CPI was 1.23%.
Yeah.
We had to use 1.23%. The next 4 years, it went to 4.7, 8, 4.12, and 2.95.
And we only can use a maximum
The
of 2.
max we're capped out at is 2%.
Thank you, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
All right, moving on to bus replacement proposal. Superintendent Smalling?
You could just stay up there, Romeo.
I'll make this semi-quick. So again, Similar to the tax cap calculation, we traditionally have been doing bus replacement each year to keep our fleet up to date, kind of surplus and get rid of those buses that are either old, have a lot of mileage, and/or are a maintenance issue for us. So we constantly, in past years, have been replacing between 20 and 25 buses each year. We wanted to talk a little bit about this year's bus replacement. So just a quick history and process. Each year, annually, there's a committee of stakeholders. Traditionally includes the garage, some finance folks, transportation administration, drivers, attendants, to get together and talk about what buses maybe we need to get rid of, what kind of buses do we need going forward, what should it look like. They're charged with determining a recommendation for the number and the type of vehicles that we want to replace, as well as which vehicles should we auction or trade in. And we've auctioned and traded in on and off in different years. I did need to bring up this electric bus initiative here in at least a sense. Current law status in the timeline per the mandate 2 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago now, is still in place. So technically, we're still in the process of, come 2027, if we buy any new buses, they have to be electric. And come 2035, the entire fleet has to be electric. However, there's a number, and you'll see on the slide here, there's a number of considerations and issues that have been discussed since the initial law was put in place. Things like, what happens if your vote fails? How about infrastructure? The redesign of garages to accommodate some, similar to us, buses are stored outside. Some places want to talk about building overhead garages over these. Is that going to be an aidable project? The availability of buses, the expense. There's a lot of things that have come up since 2 years ago that we're hearing. There could be some changes forthcoming shortly, but we don't know that yet, and we have to make this determination now. There could be some change. We're uncertain, but what we are looking at, and again, I've got this under Phase 1 transformer and chargers if needed. It's been a long process in conversations with RG&E, trying to understand what kind of power, and again, on the assumption that we do need to continue to move forward, what type of power do we need? What can we do for a Phase 1? It's taken a long time. We finally have gotten a response from RG&E on a cost to add a new transformer. We've got Cordis Technology finishing up a review for us about how to phase this out over the next several years. And with this transformer that we still need to discuss whether we need to do it or not, or if things change or not, or if it's delayed, or whatever the situation is going to be, this new transformer would power up to 20 buses for us as our first attempt at getting to electrification of the buses, should we have to continue down that road. It would go kind of where the charger is now, near the fuel islands in the back of transportation. There's a cost to put that in, and there'll be a cost to put in the chargers. We'll have to have a vote for that. There's a lot of things but we're ready should we need to go ahead and continue. My gut says we may hear something in the next couple of months about this whole project, but we're not sure what that's going to be. So with that in mind, as we've been kind of talking about this, our strategy was going to be, if this is going to stay in place, we are going to overbuy 10 buses in 25, 26, overbuy and purchase 10 additional buses in 26, 27. And then if we had to wait 2 years, a year or two, because we're waiting for the dust to settle on what's happening with this whole initiative, we could go 2 years without having to buy any buses, and our oldest bus would only be 12 or 13 years old, which is going to be manageable. At this point, we're sticking to that until something comes out that makes us go in another direction. So with that in mind, we are looking to purchase 35 gas or diesel buses during 25-26 to prepare for what may be coming down the law. We're going to buy 10 extra buses versus our normal replacement cycle of 25. And then we're going to auction or trade in 35 buses to replace, as the replacements for the 35 that we're buying, plus around 23 older buses, other buses, to shrink our fleet down to 190 as a first step. Again, driver shortage, we've got more routes sitting with Ontario Bus. We're, not only us, but everyone is struggling getting drivers. We've had a fleet of about 220. I think we're down around 215, 213. We're going to get that down to 190 because we don't need all those buses, but we probably feel 190 is a good number to start for this year, get us down to that. We still need to have buses for DOT reasons and inspections. We need spares that are out there. We've got buses that break down, you can't get parts for. So 190 is at least the first step. That could come down further in future years, but that's our goal for 25-26. Just a listing of the buses that we're looking to buy: 1570 passenger large buses for about $180,000. 1070 passenger buses with cargo for about $182,000. 2 26 passenger wheelchair buses for $140,000 apiece, and 8 30 passenger small buses at about $105,000. Interestingly, the large buses 2 years ago, we didn't buy any larger buses last year, but in 23-24, that same bus was $164,000. It's now $180,000 for the same bus, up about 9 or 10%. The 26 passenger wheelchair buses, we bought some last year. They were about $132,000 each. They're now $140,000. And the small bus, we bought some last year. They were about $100,000. They're now about $106,000. So those costs are going up 6-7% each year. Electric buses are getting more each year. We'll have to just see where things go. In aggregate, we're looking to buy 35 buses for $5.6 million. Again, as we've said in previous years, our debt service payments will begin in 25-26. We'll get transportation aid on those buses over 5 years. We're going to use about $1.89 or almost $1.9 million out of the bus reserve to pay the local share, and therefore there will be no additional local share added to the levy to pay for these new buses. And then we'll match all the payments with the debt that we have, and after 5 years, those buses are paid off.
Nope. Nope, sorry, you can't. You can't ask the question. No, ma'am. You can put it in writing to me. That's fine. Anybody have any questions? I have a couple, just to, go ahead, Ms. Farah. No, that's fine.
I just have a quick question. I know a couple years ago at the board, we talked about this when the bus mandate, electric bus mandate was going to come around. We were talking about writing a letter to our official, which would have been Senator Cooney at the time. We didn't do that, although we said we were. Now that we have, it's a new year, are we looking to do that or continuing that conversation? I did have an opportunity to speak with Cooney on Sunday and asked him, we had the same things. We talked about, we just spent millions of dollars on the transportation center. How do we go back to the taxpayers and ask them, as we have to rip up the parking lot, like you mentioned, what's going to happen? Are we still continuing? We have a lot of safety issues regarding the bus issues, battery issues, cold. I know we talked about putting roofs in other areas and towns and districts doing that indoor kind of feature. But we know in Greece that we're a very large district, and to shrink down our buses, this has been a hot topic, obviously, for our district, where do we see that letter going to our officials?
I'll answer that. Basically, the letter got delayed pending this study we've been doing with RG&E. We wanted to get that information back, so we contracted with a company to do this bus study. It's been a long process with RG&E. Once that study comes back and we have some information, then we're going to craft that letter and send it forward at that time.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And just to add to that, that study should, we're hoping will get done shortly. One of the glitches that delayed the report, which should identify all the phases, timeline, and total costs, which is what board members were interested in. It was this letter from RG&E on what their cost may be. So now that we have a portion of it, we're going to touch base with Cornice Technology to see if that's sufficient enough for them to do their projections and lay things out for us. So hopefully we should see that relatively soon.
I just have a couple things. So you said it, but I just want to make sure it's clear that there's no cost to taxpayers with this bus proposition.
Correct.
Thank you. Number two, we're not doing anything with electric buses currently. I know you had a slide about electric buses, but just so the community is aware, this bus resolution will have nothing to do with electric buses, electric bus infrastructure, anything along those lines, correct?
Correct.
And last, just from a curiosity standpoint, I see, do you have a breakdown, or maybe you do, Mr. Richardson, on the, a 70-passenger gas or diesel bus is approximately $180,000. Do we have any idea what an electric bus currently for that same size is?
$500,000? Yeah, between
So
450 and
460,000,
500.
So about $300,000 more, give or
Yeah.
take.
And the state currently has these voucher programs for about 200 or 250, but that's another big question mark, is how long is that going to be around and sustainable?
Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to extra classroom activities report. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Millar, second by Mr. Stencil. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 7-0. Moving on to 8.02, standardization, football helmets and shoulder pads district-wide. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Farah, second by Mr. Maloney. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 7-0. Ms. Farah? Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. 7-0. 9.01, budget status report. It's written information only. Does anybody have any questions? All right, moving on to 10.01, the consent agenda. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, second by Mr. Stencil. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? I would just like to thank the extra classroom activities funds at Arcadia, Athena, and Olympia for the donations they made to a various host of things across the district. I'd like to thank Archery Member for their donation of art supplies to Patty Hill, Ken and Molly Traub for the donation they made to the district, and the New York State Educational Media Technology Association for their donation to Arcadia High School for media literacy. With that, all those in favor of the consent agenda? That passes, excuse me, 7-0. Moving on to 11.01, student trip approval. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Millar, seconded by Mr. Maloney. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 7-0. Moving on to school calendar. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please, for 25-26? Moved by Vice President Farmer, seconded by, who got the second there? Mr. Stutzel. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 7-0. 13.01, second read of policies. Can I have somebody move those to the table, please?
I would like to make a motion that we consider them all in one and not read them separately, please.
Sure. Is there a second on that? Second by Vice President Farmer. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that? Seeing that all is in favor of moving them all as one? That passes 7-0. Now we're on to policies. All those in favor of adopting the policies? That passes, oh, yep. Nope, I got to get a motion on that. Can I get a motion on adopting the policies? Moved by Mr. Stetzel, second by Ms. Farmer, or Ms. Millar. With that, any questions, comments on those? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? All right, just, that passes 7-0. Let me enjoy my stroke. And can I get a motion? Mr. Maloney,
I'd like to get a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Stetzel, all those in favor? That passes. And just of note, anybody listening, the school board petitions will be ready with our district clerk next Monday, March 3rd. So if you're interested in running for the school board, the petition packet will be available next Monday. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.